We'll look this time at a couple of sections to do with liability to third parties. So to keep our timing within YouTube's limits, we'll go to this Partnership Act, look at the contents here now. In the liability to third parties, we look under relationships of partners to persons dealing with them. And you can see there's quite a significant number of sections from 8 through to 21. So for this recap, we'll simply look at contract and tort. And then we'll come back and look at some of those other sections. Now, when you're doing your assignment, you should look a bit widely through the worksheets. In the tests, we tend to focus on the major sections to illustrate how this works. However, just for now, if we take sections 8 and 12, now what we're doing with sections 8 and 12 is, just open a new, is we're looking at two areas. Now, the first one is, make that a little bit bigger, contract. And we use section 8, liability, section 12 for the amount. In torts, use section 13 for liability and section 15 for the amount. So section 8, contract. Now, if we go through back to the Partnership Act and bring up section 8, what do we actually got in section 8? We've got a big section. We'll copy that. Let's go through, just highlight what matters in this section. So every partner is agent of the firm for the purpose of the act, and the acts of every partner for carrying on in the usual way of business of the kind carried on the firm is binding on the firm. Oops, just too much highlighting going on there. It's binding on the firm and its co-partners. Usual way of business. That's a bit of a mess anyway. So the acts of every partner carrying on in the usual way business of the kind carried on by the firm bind the firm and its co-partners. So what we're talking about here is any action, any contract, in which is of the usual way of business. So define the usual way of business. Do they manufacture computers? Do they make boats? Do they take tourist trips? What is it they actually do, which would be the usual way of business? Was the contract in this usual way? Then contract is binding on the firm, meaning all partners have to pay. Okay. Now there's one exception to this. So what if there was an internal rule? Oops. Of no contracts unless agreed by all. Now, is that a defense? Now, if we look through here at the exceptions that's in this, we have that exception unless the partner had no authority. Right? So in this particular case, the partner has no authority, but it requires this other section, and the person knows he has no authority or doesn't believe him to be a partner. So our answer to that question is it has no effect. Still all liable unless the other party, the other person to the contract, knew of the internal rule or didn't know the person was a partner. So it's a straightforward situation. What this means is you can have internal rules which are very helpful for your business, but you cannot rely on them for defense against third parties who want to sue your business when one of your partners didn't follow your internal rules. Now, remember that's just contract. It's not about torts. So what happens with torts like negligence? Let's take an example of a couple. So we have, say, a married or de facto couple. So they have 2 kids. Oops. And one is an electrician. And the structure is partnership. Well, a lot of people do that because it's useful for splitting income, tax purposes and such. However, as we can conclude, it's not really a good idea. So what happens? So it's a commercial job, uses the wrong fuse or wiring, fire results, factory burns down. Now at this stage, the electrician's in breach of contract. So that's really Section 8. However, what if it also burns down McDonald's? Well, that might not upset some people, but I like the burgers. So anyway, it burns down McDonald's. Who can McDonald's sue? What is Ronald going to do? Now, if we look at Section 13, and we'll go back to that right now. So under Section 13, we have a little more straightforward, but it's much the same sort of issue without the exceptions. A wrongful act or omission. So you commit a tort or you fail. The electrician may have failed to use a fuse. That's an omission. They may have used the wrong wiring. That's an act. Either way, it's negligence. In the ordinary course of the business of the firm, then the firm is liable to the same extent as the person acting to any person who suffers a loss. So it's a very simple section. Requires define the ordinary course. It's electrical. Describe the act. Act or omission. Was it in the ordinary course? Now, if the answer to that's yes, liable. Then all partners are liable as though they carried out the negligence. Now, the only thing we need to add to this is if you look, I jumped over something. It says all with the authority of his co-partners. So let's take an example where I'm in partnership with 3 others and we have some small trucks for the business, say builders. In the weekend, I take a truck to tow my boat and I'm towing it and I get a little too much alcohol. I go through a red light and I smash up into that 420 AMG Mercedes we all like so much, $250,000. Can the owner of the Mercedes or their insurance company sue the partnership? Now, clearly they can sue me. I went through a red light over the alcohol limit. But was it in the ordinary course of the business? Now, it's in the weekend, it's towing a boat. So the answer is no. So the other partners are safe. But what if I'd rung them up and says, hey, can I use the boat for the truck for the weekend for the boat? And they went, yeah, fine. Then it's with the authority of the co-partners. If they knew I was doing this every weekend and didn't do anything about it, then you get the same issue. And this is why you need to be very careful in those circumstances. Now, the only other thing we need to cover in this short recap is how much the parties are liable for. So Section 8, use Section 12, and it's joint liability. In Section 13, For torts, use section 15 because that sets out the amount, and it's joint and several. Joint liability means everybody's liable for everything. Several, or several cut, means you're liable for your share. So here, all partners are liable for everything. So it's a 200k car, and there's three of us, that's 80-something thousand each. If one of the partners doesn't have any money though, then we're going to end up paying $100,000 each. Or one partner might pay it all. It's really up to the creditor. Joint and several liability, I could sue any of the individual, or I could be sued individually by the insurance company or owner for the full amount, or they could choose to sue both. And you can see this from sections 8 and 12. So section 12, liability of partners. Jointly for all debts and obligations, so that's contract, and liable jointly. You'll notice it's while they're a partner, after death the estate's severally liable. So if one partner dies, prior to their death they were liable jointly for the whole lot. When they die, their estate is only liable for their proportionate share of that debt. If we go through to section 15, you'll see it's jointly, every partner's jointly and severally for everything which was a partner becomes liable. So this does not extend to the estate. So it's while you're a partner, you are joint and severally liable. So if your partner managed to crash the truck and actually kill themselves, they would leave you with the liability. Okay. So we'll leave that for now. We'll come back with some more sections.